We're live with breaking news here on Monday. Nebraska is set to lose defensive coordinator Tony White and reportedly defensive line coach Terrance Knighton as well to Florida State. Steve, obviously tough. Two top 20 defenses back to back. This has always felt like a possibility. Losing White, losing him to a quote unquote lateral job is interesting. Not something maybe most people expected when they thought Terrance Knighton Tony White specifically would be leaving. Obviously, a lot to get to in terms of the fallout from this, where Nebraska goes, what this means with signing day a couple days away. Where's your head at right now, Steve?
Yeah, I mean it's not a shock that Tony White's moving on from the program, right? I mean, last offseason he was rumored to be in the conversation for the head coach openings at both San Diego State, where he had spent some time as an assistant, and then UCLA, where he was a former player. He was a linebacker for the Bruins. He ultimately decided to stay at Nebraska and got a raise to 1.6 million each season. So you can kind of just, during that time, you could kind of look in the future and kind of understand that he's going to be a hot commodity each offseason that he's in at Nebraska. So this isn't a shock, but when I hear the term like a lateral move to Florida State, like I understand where people are coming from with that, but you have to look at this, from his point of view, right? He's going to get paid more, probably, because Florida State has that ability to do so, and Nebraska does too. But he's going to get paid more than he's currently getting paid. He's going to be in a fertile recruiting ground area. He's going to be at Florida State. It's going to be a lot easier for him to recruit the kind of athlete that he wants to recruit, and he's going to be coordinating a defense under a head coach who's an offensive guy and Mike Norvell. So, I don't know what the situation, how much Matt Rule has his opinion and fingers on Nebraska's defense. But with Tony White moving to Florida State and coaching under an offensive head coach, you'd like to think that Tony White's going to be the guy at running the show on the defense and not have to worry about anybody else coming in and having their opinions and maybe trying to change what Tony White truly wants to do. So maybe those are the things that I kind of look at and say, maybe it's not so much of a lateral move. Like I understand he's going from DC to DC, but if you look at Florida State, they're coming off that excellent 2023 season, but a brutally bad 2024 season. But I still think the ceiling for what Florida State can do and be, and how much easier the path might be for a college football playoff.
Especially in the ACC.
Yes, absolutely, especially in the ACC. So the path might be easier for the college football playoff. I just think the ceiling at Florida State right now is potentially higher than Nebraska right now. So I see a lot of positives for this move. So I totally understand it coming from Tony White's point of view.
For sure. And like you mentioned, I think part of this is having more control. Mike Norvell's offensive guy, more of an offensive mind. Gus Malzahn, obviously the offensive coordinator, will be solely focused on that side of the ball. Essentially, it's White's unit again. It's completely his. This year with the addition of John Butler and Matt Rule having, more of a CEO type approach. There was a lot of voices on the defensive side of the ball. And so, we'll see, for Nebraska, I mean, this changes some things kind of heading into signing days a couple of days out. We know top commits like Christian Jones and Dawson Merritt. Those guys were excited about the opportunity about playing in Tony White's defense, and it just throws a wrench in that. As far as we're able to gather, Nebraska's done a good job throughout this whole process about staying transparent. This was always a known possibility that Nebraska could lose White. So for the most part, I expect the follow from White's departure specifically to not have a significant fallout. In fact, I think the impact is more felt with the current roster than it is in the recruiting class. However, the loss of Terrance Knighton throws a wrench in a lot of different things. It throws a wrench in your current roster because we know how close that defensive line room is, not only just with each other, but with Terrance Knighton. James Williams calls him a father figure. You hear about the way the guys in that room talk about him. The guys that came here because of him. You look in this recruiting class, Malcolm Simpson's a guy that that loves Terrance Knighton. The main reason he's coming to Nebraska is because of Terrance Knighton. What happens with that recruitment here in these final few days. So there's a lot on the table now for Nebraska, and uh, we're looking at the current roster. We've already seen cryptic tweets from Larry Tarver. South Florida guys like Amari Sanders and Vincent Shavers, could see an opportunity to go back closer to home. None of this is definitive, of course. It's kind of mainly just it's all, of course, just kind of speculating. But there's a lot on the table now. This is the type of move that has a domino effect, and it can really hurt Nebraska and what they were building on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might kind of be a scary moment right now for Husker fans. That's totally understandable. But we have seen Matt Rule kind of, in the hires that he has made on short notice or just like kind of out of the blue when he needed to make a hire right away. I mean he's knocked some of those out of the park, especially with John Butler, coming over from the NFL the last 6 years with the Buffalo Bills, coaching that secondary over here. He has defensive coordinator experience in college as well. So, there's going to be some in-house options if Matt Rule wants to do that. John Butler being one of them. Rob Dvorak, I know he's a young guy and he might not be ready right now, but he's potentially just a candidate if you're going to be making a candidates list. But yeah, there's some other guys that Matt Rule, I'm sure Rule is just what I'm trying to say is Rule has been prepared for these types of things and he knows how the business is, especially nowadays where the coaching carousel, just like every single year, it's going to be spinning nonstop and rosters, coaching staffs are going to look completely different year after year. This is a new reality of college football. So Matt Rule and his staff knows that. And I'm sure, they have some names ready to go and potentially already in the works.
For sure. Yeah, and that's they have to move quick. I mean, part of it is
Yeah.
is even if it's not a public move, they have to move quick. Signing day again is in 2 days. So you have to have somewhat of a plan in place and an idea of what the future holds for Nebraska. Because you have a good D line, you have a good defensive class. You put together a really good defensive class. And I think the linebacker group they've put together, I think the linebacker room in general is stable if Rob Dvorak sticks around. We'll see what happens in the secondary. Some of those guys are John Butler guys. Some of those guys are Tony White guys. I think that room could take a bit of a hit in terms of the both the recruiting, potentially the recruiting, for sure the current roster. Yeah, I mean for you, John Butler is obviously a name that is for sure going to get
Sure.
consideration. And when he was hired, that was part of the plan. Was kind of definitely felt like a coordinator in waiting.
Mhm.
Are there any other names you're particularly intrigued by as Nebraska turns here? I know two that come to mind, but are there any for you that intrigue you?
I think the two names that come to my mind are the same two that come to your mind. Phil Snow, obviously has a long history of coordinating defenses for Matt Rule, especially at Baylor and in the NFL at Carolina. But obviously the age there, I mean, he's over 70 years old. So, I don't know if coming out of retirement is something that Phil Snow wants to do. But also a very popular name, Elijah Robinson, is the DC at Syracuse right now. He has some connections to Rule as well. He is a Penn State. He played at Penn State, so that's one connection with Rule. He was a very very good D line coach and recruiter at Texas A&M. Tim, you know all about that with what Elijah Robinson did. I think Elijah Robinson would be maybe priority number one if I were just kind of just thinking outside the box right now and be like, who's the next DC at Nebraska? I think Elijah Robinson deserves a phone call.
Yeah, especially with if Knighton does end up leaving, I think
Yep.
Robinson becomes much more of a serious candidate because of his recruiting ability on the trail at D line and his ability to develop. You look at the guys at Texas A&M right now. A lot of them, like Shamar Stewart,
Yeah.
developed and coached by Elijah Robinson. Fadil Diggs having a good season out there in Syracuse, developed by him. Walter Nolan at Ole Miss started at Texas A&M, developed by Elijah Robinson. Robinson's resume is real good, and he does a really good job of communicating with recruits on the trail. Yeah, that would be call number one. The other name, I mean, obviously I've seen it floating around, and Who knows how realistic it is because I think this guy's going to have a lot of calls. Jim Leonard, another potential option. I do think Nebraska's going to be aggressive. I think Nebraska has the salary pool and the trajectory to kind of sell to be aggressive here and make a serious move. It just has to happen quick, like I said, with the transfer portal opening up next week, with you know signing day days away. Nebraska's going to have to move quick. This is going to be a proactive process. And yeah, we're here. We're in the off season, full swing.
Silly season. It's a good term for it right now because keep your head on a swivel. It's going to be a lot of changes going on right now at Nebraska, not just Nebraska, every program across college football. It's going to be quite interesting.
For sure. For you and I guess in retrospect, kind of looking back on what Tony White did here this program the last 2 years and assessing the progress. Obviously, how do you build from this? How do you build from what he's done the last 2 years? Do you think it's as simple as hiring someone and keeping the train on the track, or do you have to kind of go outside of your current pool or your current group of guys? Like, do you have to try make another splash? Because White was outside of Rule's typical hiring pool.
Mhm.
Do you have to go out and make, a kind of a different hire here too?
Anytime you lose somebody like White who has been there and done his thing for 2 seasons, I think that hurts the program just because I'm a huge fan of continuity on the coaching staff and having everybody kind of in the same spots and just like year after year and having the players get to know them and establishing a culture on that side of the ball and just playing that same brand of football. And then anytime that person leaves, I mean, you got to almost start all over again, depending on who it is, if he comes from outside of the program. I think it would be good for Matt Rule just to go about this search process just like he did the first time and maybe go outside of his box. But it just depends on what he wants. He's a defensive guy at heart. He kind of he's 2 seasons in with Big Ten football right now. He has a better understanding of what's needed on that side of the ball than he did two years ago. So yeah, I mean, I think I could definitely see him going outside of the box right now because just looking at the options from in the program, John Butler kind of sticks out right now, but outside of him, I kind of struggle to come up with a name that would get players excited and get the fan base excited. But it's a this thing has a lot of components to it, a lot of different talking points to it. But yeah, I think going outside of the box, and maybe going outside of the program, and finding somebody that fits what Matt Rule wants on that side of the ball is going to be key.
Yeah, and I know he's young. Are we discounting Rob Dvorak?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Rob earlier, and I know he's a talented player or a talented coach and everything, and he's a well-respected guy. He's young, he's full of energy, and he's done better. In 2024, he did a lot better of a job in press conferences. He sounded more defensive coordinator ish up there than he did in 2023 when he was just kind of like a soft spoken, quiet linebacker coach who didn't really enjoy talking. We saw that change this season where he actually had some fun up there at the podium and kind of seemed like he was almost being groomed to be the next defensive coordinator at Nebraska. But with somebody like John Butler on the staff at the same time with the resume that he has with the NFL and past DC experience in college football at Penn State. I mean, it's just, maybe hard to overlook somebody like John Butler for Rob Dvorak, but that's nothing against Rob Dvorak. He's an excellent coach and he's doing his good thing, but maybe a little bit more seasoning if I had to guess.
For sure. Yeah, and outside of that, obviously we're going to be tuned into everything. A lot can change here in the next couple hours, days. We'll be tuned in and be sure to tune in along with us. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel. Obviously, we don't come with the best news here on Monday, but obviously, this is silly season. This is the coaching carousel. A lot's going to happen here in the next couple of days, weeks between the transfer portal, signing day. Coaching news now as Nebraska has a defensive coordinator vacancy and potentially a defensive line vacancy. And as they kind of sort through all of this, we'll keep you updated on everything as it happens. But yeah, and Steve, anything else before we get out of here?
No, I mean it's just it's just going to be a stay tuned to Inside Nebraska. We'll keep our ear to the ground and make sure to report on anything that we hear and can confirm. So yeah, busy time of year.
For sure. Well, that'll do it for us.